Good morning, Excellencies, Eminences, members of the Diplomatic Corps, fellow academicians, ladies and gentlemen. I extend you warm greetings and thank you for your endeavors on behalf of the education of the next generation. The work of education cultivates the signs of healthy, nourishing, and engaged children. In the Platonic tradition, education, as President Samagni mentioned, endeavors to nurture logic, truth, ethics, goodness, and aesthetics, beauty. In the words of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, the mission of schools is to develop a sense of truth, of what is good and beautiful. And this occurs through a rich path made up of many ingredients. True education enables us to love life and opens us to the fullness of life. Basic primary education has become a normative ideal the world over. Over the last 5 decades, schooling has emerged globally as the most important societal institution for the education of the next generation. UN data suggests that the world has made remarkable progress in participation in education. Enrollment of children in primary education is at present nearly universal. The gender gap has narrowed, and in some regions of the world, girls tend to perform better in schools than boys and progress in a more timely manner. Progress in the participation of children in schools is a laudable achievement, yet completion and quality remain a challenge. Millions of children are out of school, and illiteracy remains rampant. Approximately 780 million adults over the age of 15 are illiterate. Women make up more than half the illiterate population in the world. Poverty, inequality, unchecked climate change, the globalization of indifference, an extreme form of which is the modern child slavery, thwart the opportunities of the flourishing of children. Indeed, they represent the most significant undertow towards meeting the Millennial Development Goals of reaching universal basic education. It is by nurturing socio-emotional learning, including, in the words of the Holy Father, quote, patient listening, constructive dialogue, and better mutual understanding, end of quote, values and virtues of engaged citizenship, and by imparting skills, sensibilities, and competencies to prepare youth for the labor market, that schools the world over become meaningful vehicles for collective empowerment and positive social action. Formal public schooling must endeavor to inculcate in children and youth humane sensibilities, empathy, compassion, and perspective-taking, communication and collaboration skills, higher order cognitive skills for critical thinking, as well as the metacognitive abilities to become lifelong learners and engage civic agents. 21st century economies and societies are predicated on increasing complexity and diversity, the twin corollaries of an ever more interconnected world that is ever more miniaturized and fragile. The gap between what education is and what education needs to be define perhaps the most important challenges facing public education today. As past academician and Professor Joseph Stiglitz noted in this very room yesterday, we find ourselves in a moment of deep crises. Above all, a crisis in the moral order and a crisis in the practice of democratic citizenship. The unchecked climate change crisis, the crisis in solidarity, the crisis in human trafficking, the crisis of inequality in the context of so much wealth define the malaise of our times. Of course, another world is possible. And the good news is that education, as the Holy Father Pope Francis has said, Now I have to speak in the language of the Great Plains of La Mancha. Hoy reavivamos el compromiso por y con las jóvenes generaciones, dice el Santo Padre, renovando la pasión por una educación más abierta e incluyente, capaz de escuchar con paciencia, del diálogo constructivo y de la mutua comprensión. Hoy, más que nunca, es necesario unir los esfuerzos por una alianza educativa amplia para formar personas maduras y capaces de superar fragmentaciones y contraposiciones y reconstruir el tejido de las relaciones por una humanidad más fraterna. Educar exige entrar en un diálogo sincero y leal con los jóvenes. Ante todo, ellos son quienes nos interpelan sobre la urgencia de esa solidaridad intergeneracional que desgraciadamente ha desaparecido en los últimos años. Continue to quote the Holy Father. En efecto, hay una tendencia en muchas partes del mundo a encerrarse en sí mismos, a proteger los derechos individuales y los privilegios adquiridos, y a concebir el mundo dentro de un horizonte limitado que trata con indiferencia a los ancianos y, sobre todo, que no ofrece más espacio para la vida naciente a los jóvenes. El crecimiento del invierno demográfico, especialmente en el occidente, es la triste y emblemática representación de todo esto. The economies and societies of, end of quote, the economies and societies of the 21st century are increasingly based in the paradigm of complexity and diversity. The gap is very, very clear. As prophetically, Sarmiento, with Horace Mann, perhaps the architect of the public education systems in the Americas, said prophetically, quote, all problems today are education problems. Education is the path, end of quote. Education is the path for development and an engine for solidarity, well-being, and happiness. The data suggests that education, almost any way that encourages and supports basic literacy and deeper literacy, and the core values of citizenship, an ethic of solidarity, compassion, and fraternity, generates powerful, virtuous cycles. The best empirical data suggests that comprehensive education is a powerful immunity against poverty, especially for girls, but for all children and youth. In this workshop of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences on Education, the Global Compact, today, tomorrow, and moving forward, we shall endeavor to examine new levers to make education in public schools more humane and equitable, more engaging and purposeful, and more relevant to the desperate needs of economies, societies, and citizenship in the 21st century. We shall examine, inter alia, the new science of mind, brain, and education, the promise of technology to reach and engage children who currently have little or no opportunities for learning, and the education of growing populations of immigrant and refugee origin youth now living on the move, as well as the education of our aging populations the world over. We shall address the effects of growing inequality and unchecked climate change and human trafficking on education, as well as the tools to reverse the effects of both. So, my dear colleagues, you have your work cut out for you. Thank you very much.